Y'all, let me tell you about the most painful seat at any table. The one where your own family looks at you like you don't belong. I sat in that seat for years during family gatherings, listening to my relatives talk about everyone else's success while pretending I wasn't even there. But last month, I met a young woman named Sophie who's sitting in that exact same chair right now. And her story reminded me why sometimes the people who love you the most can hurt you the deepest. See, we think family support is automatic. We think the people who share our blood automatically share our vision. But sometimes the hardest battle you'll ever fight isn't against strangers who don't believe in you. It's against the people sitting around your dinner table who think they know what's best for your life better than you do. Let me take y'all back to Thanksgiving, 1989. I'm 32 years old, driving my beat-up Oldsmobile to my Uncle Robert's house in Cleveland. I got $15 in my pocket, holes in my shoes, and a dream that everybody in my family thinks is stupid. See, by this time, I'd been doing comedy for about 3 years, making maybe $50 a week if I was lucky, sleeping on couches, eating bologna sandwiches for dinner. And my family, they were tired of hearing about my comedy career. I walk into that house, and it's like walking into a courtroom where I'm already been found guilty. My cousin Dennis is there. He just got promoted to supervisor at the Ford plant. My brother Terry's talking about his new house in the suburbs. My sister's bragging about her daughter making honor roll. And then there's me, Uncle Steve with the hobby. I'll never forget sitting at that dinner table listening to my Aunt Louise ask Dennis about his promotion, asking Terry about his mortgage, asking my sister about her kids' grades. Then she gets to me and the whole table goes quiet. "So Steve," she says, not even looking at me, "you still doing that comedy thing?" That comedy thing, like it was a disease. "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Matter of fact, I got a gig next week at the Cleveland Comedy Club." You could hear a pin drop. Then my cousin Dennis, this fool, looks at me and says, "Steve, when you gonna get a real job? You got bills to pay. You can't eat laughs." The whole table starts nodding. My own mama, God rest her soul, she looks at me with these disappointed eyes and says, "Baby, maybe it's time to think about something more that's stable." Y'all, I felt smaller than an ant at that table. Here I am, 32 years old, and my own family is treating me like a child who refuses to grow up. But the worst part, the absolute worst part, was when my Uncle Robert stands up and makes this toast. He says, "Let's toast to all the successful people at this table, to Dennis and his promotion, to Terry and his new house, to Patricia and her smart kids." He looked right past me, like I wasn't even there. I excused myself to the bathroom and sat on that toilet seat for 10 minutes, fighting back tears. I looked at myself in that mirror and thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I am just fooling myself. Now fast forward to last month. I'm in San Diego doing a corporate event, and during the meet and greet, this young woman approaches me. She's got tears in her eyes, but she's trying to smile. "Mr. Harvey," she says, "I think I'm living your story, but I don't know how it ends." Her name is Sophie Martinez. She's 29 years old, works as a marketing coordinator for a small nonprofit, but her real passion? She's been building a sustainable fashion startup for 2 years. Eco-friendly clothing made from recycled materials. "I've been working on this business every night after my day job," she tells me. "I've got prototypes, I've got investors interested, I've even got some small boutiques ready to carry my line. But my family..." Her voice trails off, and I already know where this is going. Sophie tells me about her family's Christmas dinner 3 weeks prior. Her parents immigrated from Mexico, worked multiple jobs their whole lives to give their kids stability. Her brother Carlos is a lawyer, her sister Maria is a nurse, and her younger brother just graduated engineering school. "They see my 9-to-5 nonprofit job as the safe choice," she says. "But when I told them I wanted to quit and run my business full-time, it was like I told them I wanted to join the circus." Sophie describes that Christmas dinner, and y'all, it's like deja vu all over again. Her father, Luis, who worked construction for 30 years, looks at her across the dinner table and says, "Mija, you have a good job with benefits. Why would you throw that away for some experiment?" Her mother, Carmen, who cleaned offices at night while raising 4 kids, shakes her head and says, "Fashion? Sophie, that's for rich people. That's not for girls like us." Then her brother Carlos, this is the part that really got to me. Carlos looks at her and says, "Sophie, you're being selfish. Mom and Dad sacrificed everything so we could have stable careers. You want to risk all that for what? To sell clothes?" The whole family starts piling on. Her sister Maria says fashion is frivolous. Her younger brother says she should be realistic. Her aunt says she should think about her future. Sophie tells me she sat there listening to 15 people who claimed to love her tear apart her dreams like they were discussing the weather. The worst part, she says, was when my dad stood up to make his traditional Christmas toast. He said, "I'm proud of my children who have built stable lives. Carlos the lawyer, Maria the nurse, Miguel the engineer." He didn't mention Sophie. She was sitting right there, and he acted like her dreams didn't even exist. Sophie tells me she went to the bathroom and cried for 20 minutes. "I looked at myself in that mirror," she says, "and I thought maybe they're right. Maybe I'm being irresponsible. Maybe I should just give up and be grateful for what I have." Now, let me tell you what I told Sophie, because this is the lesson it took me decades to learn. See, what both Sophie and I figured out is that family resistance isn't always about love. Sometimes it's about fear. Sometimes it's about control. And sometimes it's about people projecting their own limitations onto your possibilities. When my family called my comedy career that comedy thing, they weren't just dismissing my dreams. They were telling me that they couldn't see beyond their own experience. They'd never seen anyone in our family take a creative risk, so they couldn't imagine it working. When Sophie's family called her business an experiment, they weren't just being practical. They were speaking from their immigrant experience, where stability meant survival, where taking risks meant potentially losing everything they'd worked for. But here's what both of us had to learn. You can't live your life trying to make other people comfortable with your choices. You can't shrink your dreams to fit other people's fears. The people who love you the most will sometimes be the ones who limit you the most, not because they don't want you to succeed, but because they can't bear the thought of watching you fail. Y'all want to know what happened after that Thanksgiving dinner in 1989? I drove home from my uncle's house, and instead of giving up, I got angry. Not mean angry, determined angry. I realized that if I was going to fail, I was going to fail on my own terms, not because I gave up to make other people comfortable. 6 months later, I got my first paying gig hosting a local morning radio show. That led to Me and the Boys. That led to the Steve Harvey Show. That led to everything you see today. But here's the beautiful part. By the next Thanksgiving, the same relatives who questioned my comedy thing were asking me to get them tickets to my shows. And Sophie, 3 weeks after she told me her story, she made a decision. She put in her 2 weeks notice at the nonprofit and went full-time with her sustainable fashion line. Her first collection sold out in 2 weeks. She just signed with a major retailer. Last week, she texted me a photo from a fashion magazine featuring her story titled "The Future of Sustainable Fashion." But the real victory. Last month, her father, Luis, posted on Facebook, "Proud of my daughter, Sophie, the successful businesswoman." The same man who called her dreams an experiment was now bragging about her success to his friends. So here's your homework, and this might be the hardest assignment I've ever given you. If you're sitting at a table where your own family makes you feel small, if you're surrounded by people who love you but don't believe in your vision, I want you to do what Sophie and I learned to do. First, understand that their fear isn't about you, it's about them. When someone tells you to be realistic, they're really saying, be safe like me. When they say, think about your future, they mean, think about the future I can understand. Second, stop trying to convince them and start trying to show them. You can't argue someone into believing in your dreams. You can only prove them with your results. Stop explaining and start executing. Third, set boundaries around your dreams. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they get a vote in your vision. Love them, respect them, but don't let them veto your future. Fourth, remember that approval is nice, but it's not necessary. Some of the greatest success stories started with family rejection. Walt Disney's brother told him his ideas were too risky. Oprah's family thought she was getting too big for her britches. Your family's job is to love you. Your job is to become who you're meant to be. Sometimes those two things don't line up, and that's okay. Sophie learned something that I wish I'd learned earlier. Sometimes you have to disappoint the people you love in the short term to become the person they'll be proud of in the long term. Your dreams don't need their permission. Your success doesn't require their understanding. Your vision doesn't have to make sense to anyone but you. So the next time you're sitting at that table where you feel like you don't belong, remember this. You're not the black sheep. You're the one with the courage to be different. You're not the family failure. You're the family pioneer. And sometimes the people who question your path the loudest will be the ones cheering the loudest when you reach your destination. Your family will come around, but don't wait for them to catch up before you start running toward your dreams. Because at the end of the day, you'd rather have them be proud of who you became than comfortable with who you stayed.